happy Wednesday morning, April 21st, 2021. I'm Riley King, and welcome to this Wednesday morning edition of The Morning Show with Riley King. It's time to rise and shine and get this Wednesday morning off to a good start. So sit back, relax, grab that good cup of coffee, and enjoy this Wednesday morning edition of The Morning Show with Riley King, where we have a little bit of everything for you in this program. I hope you all enjoy watching today's program. Let's get started right now. First up, let's take a look at your COVID-19 numbers from Johns Hopkins University in Medicine COVID-19 dashboard. Let's take a look at that right now. And here is a look at that for all of you right now. Your global cases are 143,022,878. Your U.S. cases are 31,793,509. Your global deaths are 3,046,432. And your U.S. deaths are 5,680,475. And that is a look at your COVID-19 dashboard from Johns Hopkins University and Medicine. And now let's get to some other news. First up, Derek Chauvin found guilty on all 13 counts for the death of George Floyd. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC News right now.
Good evening. As we come on the air in the West tonight, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have addressed the nation after the guilty verdict in the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, found guilty on all three charges in the death of George Floyd nearly a year ago. The jury coming to a swift, unanimous decision after just 10 and a half hours of deliberations. The president saying this is a step forward and revealing tonight that he talked with George Floyd's family and to his young daughter, who he told, "Your daddy has changed the world with a legacy of peace and justice that you should be proud of." It comes just hours after we all witnessed that camera trained on Derek Chauvin's face as the judge read the decision: guilty of second-degree murder, guilty of third-degree murder, and guilty of second-degree manslaughter. Guilty on all three charges, as I mentioned. The silence broken outside the courthouse. Hundreds gathered. Shouts of surprise, but also relief at George Floyd Square, outside Cup Foods, where Floyd died on Memorial Day last year. And these images of George Floyd's family receiving a phone call from President Biden after the verdict, telling the family, quote, "Nothing is going to make it all better, but at least now there is some justice." And this image tonight from Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington, D.C., across from the White House. A young black man falling to his knees in tears after the verdict. Within moments, Derek Chauvin was placed in handcuffs and led away, potentially facing up to 4 decades behind bars. At this hour tonight, the reaction now coming in from across this country, and the question, what comes next in this nation's reckoning on race, justice, and policing? ABC's Alex Perez leads us off tonight from Minneapolis.
Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts.
The jury deliberating just 10 and a half hours, and with the nation watching, Judge Peter Cahill reading their unanimous verdict.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. Verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. Verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty.
The jury of 7 women and 5 men, which included 6 people of color, stayed late last night and came in early this morning. They worked swiftly and didn't send out a single question during their deliberations.
Are these your verdicts? So say you one, so say you all.
Yes.
In Houston, George Floyd's family members watching as the verdict was read.
Find the defendant guilty. Find the defendant guilty.
Moments later, a call from President Biden.
You're incredible. You're an incredible family. I wish I were there just with arms around you.
Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris addressing the nation tonight.
Today, we feel a sigh of relief. Still, it cannot take away the pain. A measure of justice isn't the same as equal justice.
We can and we must do more to reduce the likelihood that tragedies like this will ever happen and occur again. And this takes acknowledging and confronting head-on systemic racism and the racial disparities that exist in policing and in our criminal justice system more broadly.
The prosecution built their case around that video seen around the world, the 9 minutes and 29 seconds that sparked a racial reckoning movement, telling jurors, believe your own eyes.
It's exactly what you knew. It's what you felt in your gut. It's what you now know in your heart. This wasn't policing. This was murder.
The teenager who shot that video, Darnella Frazier, taking the stand, testifying off camera. Like so many eyewitnesses, she's still haunted by what she saw.
When I look at George Floyd, I look at my dad. I look at my brothers. I look at my cousins, my uncles, because they are all Black. I look at how that could have been one of them. It's been nights. I stayed up apologizing and apologizing to George Floyd for not doing more.
A dozen law enforcement witnesses, including the Minneapolis chief of police, testified against Derek Chauvin.
To continue to apply that level of force to a person proned out, handcuffed behind their back, that in no way, shape, or form is anything that is by policy. It is not part of our training, and it is certainly not part of our ethics or our values.
The prosecution's medical experts were blunt.
A healthy person subjected to what Mr. Floyd was subjected to would have died as a result of what he was subjected to.
Chauvin opting not to take the stand in his own defense.
I will invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege today.
His attorney calling just 7 witnesses to the prosecution's 38. They sought to convince jurors that George Floyd's heart disease and drug use led to his death, not Chauvin's knee on his neck.
Derek Chauvin did exactly what he had been trained to do over the course of his 19-year career. The use of force is not attractive, but it is a necessary component of policing.
But the jury was not convinced, and tonight we have their judgment. What Derek Chauvin did to George Floyd wasn't policing, it was murder. The former officer put in handcuffs himself as he was led out of court.
And so where do we go from here as far as Derek Chauvin and his fate? Let's bring in Alex Perez, who's been covering this case from the start and the trial there in Minneapolis. Alex, I understand Derek Chauvin will be sentenced in about 8 weeks now, and he faces up to 40 years behind bars based on that most serious of the charges?
Yeah, David, he faces up to 40 years behind bars. Now, the judge will have a lot of discretion when it comes to sentencing. He will be able to consider many different factors when he imposes that sentence. And, David, tonight we did hear from Darnella Frazier. That's the young woman who recorded that video seen around the world in a tweet tonight saying, George Floyd, we did it. Justice has been served. David?
Darnella Frazier reacting to the news today, and remember her on the witness stand saying she has cried many a night wondering if she could have done more for George Floyd. Alex Perez leading us off tonight on this evening. Alex, thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. The U.S. reacts to the verdict in Derek Chauvin trial, guilty. Let's take a look at this video and that report.
Of course, there's already a strong reaction and moving reactions coming in from across this country. George Floyd's death sparked demonstrations and protests and conversations, including people from various races and backgrounds across this country, parents bringing their children out to these protests. And tonight, ABC's Lindsay Davis is in Minneapolis with what we're seeing so far.
Tonight, the crowd outside Cup Foods in Minneapolis erupting in cheers as they learned of Derek Chauvin's conviction in George Floyd's death. At the U.S. Capitol, members of the Congressional Black Caucus clasping hands as they listened to the verdict. The disturbing video of Chauvin with his knee on Floyd's neck as Floyd told officers he could not breathe stunned the world. The Memorial Day incident then inciting outrage with people from various races and backgrounds taking to the streets. In the nation's capital and across the country last summer, scenes of protesters face down in silence, remembering the 46-year-old father. The Black Lives Matter movement seeing a resurgence. And from Los Angeles to Phoenix, Orlando to New York City, demonstrators demanding justice for Floyd, but also for other African Americans who've died in police custody. At the Brooklyn Memorial Service, his brother Terrence telling our David Muir his family appreciated the diversity seen among demonstrators.
When you looked out into that crowd and you saw that sea of faces, black, white, Asian American, Latino, what did you make of it?
I just knew my brother was proud. Because I know the whole Floyd family was proud of that. Because we all standing together. We all standing together for the cause of justice.
In September of last year, that intersection near where Floyd was arrested, renamed George Floyd Square.
And so let's bring in Lindsay Davis tonight, our Sunday night anchor who's on the ground in Minneapolis. And Lindsay, George Floyd's death, we know, sparked a conversation across this country and a long overdue one. And you were saying as we were on the air with our breaking coverage earlier that the word that best describes perhaps what you witnessed there in Minneapolis is that people exhaled. And I gather that happened in cities across this country and in small towns where we saw these protests and conversations started between police and people who live in those communities. And tonight, Ken Moten reporting that George Floyd's family hopes that this verdict is just the beginning of this next chapter.
That's right. You can still hear some celebratory cheers out in the streets now, but people are also ready to get to work as far as real change. Many members of the Black Caucus and Democrats are asking for legislation, specifically named George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. This is legislation that would combat misconduct in policing, and particularly racial bias in policing. David.
Lindsay Davis with our coverage in Minneapolis tonight. Lindsay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And we're going to switch gears now, and let's go into weather. And here is a look at the weather across the United States for this Wednesday. As you can see, all around here, you're seeing snow, and then it turns a little rain down here. There's some rain off along the edge of Florida. And the rest of the United States looks dry. And that is a look at your weather across the United States for this Wednesday. And we are going to switch gears now. Let's go into entertainment news. In entertainment news, Travis Baker is infatuated with Kourtney Kardashian and wants to spend their future together. Let's take a listen to that video from Entertainment Tonight.
Did you know Geico could save you hundreds on car insurance and more? So what are you waiting for? World's strongest man, Martins Litzis, to help you break down boxes?
What am I gonna do to you, Box? Let me break it down for you. Oh!
Geico. See all the ways you could save.
Things are heating up between Kourtney Kardashian and Travis Barker.
This is such a dream come true.
Meanwhile, Kourt's ex, Scott Disick, is still adjusting to the reality star's new relationship.
I think we've been through so much.
A source tells ET that Travis is, quote, so in love and infatuated with the Poosh founder, adding that they are having the best time together. Quote, he's 100% all in and totally sees a future with her. Kourtney is living her best life and is truly so happy.
I'm just like living life and whatever happens, happens.
Meanwhile, while it comes to Kourtney's ex, Scott Disick, who's currently dating 19-year-old model Amelia Hamlin, the source says it's been an adjustment for him getting used to Kourt and Travis's serious relationship. Quote, he is still trying to get used to it. Scott is still close with Kourtney, but things between them have changed a bit.
I mean, I think you just gotta figure out really what's important to you at the end of the day.
Both Scott and Travis wish the 42-year-old Keeping Up star a happy birthday over the weekend. Scott posting this pic to his Insta story with their 3 kids, Mason, Penelope, and Rain, alongside the text, quote, happy birthday to the best mom a child could ask for, and some more. The post came after Travis shared a PDA-heavy tribute in honor of her special day, sharing several cute snaps like these, and writing in the caption, quote, I f***ing love you. You're a blessing to this world. Sweet, right? Well, get this. Travis recently got Kourt's name inked on his chest.
I love it.
And, well, he also included this video in his birthday tribute to Kourtney.
Travis.
Yeah, that's one way to celebrate a birthday. Kourtney sucking on Travis's finger.
Travis.
Anyways, a source told ET earlier this month that Kourt is the happiest she's been in a long time, and her family is thrilled for her. Quote, Kourtney's been trying to keep their relationship as private as she can on social media, but they're both super into each other and cute together.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And that does it for this edition of The Morning Show with Riley King. Thank you for watching this Wednesday morning edition of The Morning Show with Riley King. Have a great rest of your Wednesday and see you back here tomorrow for another edition of The Morning Show with Riley King. See you back here later on today with more news coverage. Goodbye.